Now this one's interesting. We got another one of these. The topic itself, I mean, I don't really have too much interest in it to be honest, but this is Panthea, by the way, one of the somebody who does a lot with tanking, let's put it that way. But this is a topic that only impacts a small subject of the player base. The announcement of raid testing doesn't leave guilds from EU or Oceanic region much time to get stuff planned, as it's late night for EU on a weekday or early morning for Oceanic, so there's more planning involved than simply just attending and getting a group assembled. Would love it if we had a much more of a heads up. For example, announcement on Monday for tests on Thursday or Tuesday for the tests on Friday. There's already a challenge in getting a group together. Adding time pressure doesn't help and means that data is tainted, as you may have to go with an uncoordinated group pugs rather than a team that will play as you expect. So yeah, they're right. Obviously, very, 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 very small subject of the player base. I never really felt like I was never rushing onto the PCR to test stuff. And that's why I'm making this video, because this is a really, really big issue for Blizzard moving forward. So I'm really interested in reading this and hearing what your thoughts are. But to me, the root of all evils with this game is the PTR and beta and stuff in general. I think every problem that the game suffers from, I'm not really sure how to describe this, because obviously I'm not talking about like, imbalance. I even know, I think really almost everything you could come up with can be solved by just becoming better at testing the game and getting more players involved in testing the game. So, I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who raided weekly for 13 years, right? And for me to say that I never really went on the PCR to test raids, I mean, like, who else is going to do it, right? So there's been two reasons why I've never done it. One is because it's at awful times. Like that's actually the number one reason. It was always at awful times when I couldn't get people that I knew who would be interested together. It'd be like Thursday afternoon. It's like, dude, everybody's working, or we don't raid on Thursday. Like it's just like not. It's just not good. And second of all was because it was just like we're still working on the current tier. I don't really have any time for this. So, but this is kind of the big issue with like they're testing it for a reason, right? Like it's not like if nobody tested it, what would they do? Like legitimately, I wonder what they would do if nobody tested a boss that they put up. And I don't know how much they rely on that. I'm not really sure how important it is, but it's something that I feel like is kind of overarching a big problem every. So let's read the post, and then I'm going to tell you more about why I feel that way. Anyway, this guy's basically, saying like, "Oh, great, yeah, it's feedback that we are understanding to understand." But now, so now he's gonna. This is what I've always wanted. This is so good to see this from this whole community council thing, quote unquote, because actually seeing into the process is what I recommended this years ago. I'm like, and we talked about this in previous videos. When I say the root of all evil, it's because like, so much, first of all, data mining, it's like so bad for the game, man, because people, they see things and they're like fragmented reality. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, they're doing this thing, but they didn't say why they're doing it. We don't know anything about it. We can't test it. It's just like completely out of context. So I don't really, yeah, I don't like it at all. I'd rather that they didn't do it, I think is what I'm trying to say. But I'd rather, like, that would be my number one want, but my number two want right underneath it would be that they do it and just fucking actually tell us why they're doing things when they do them and give people insight into what they're testing so they have an understanding and they're not just blind monkeys like filling out data sheets for Blizzard. So anyway, to understand this problem, we need to take a step back and talk about how we do PTR testing. The week prior to a PTR test, we confirm which bosses are ready for testing and ask their designers to have them in a stable and testable state by the end of the week. That's interesting, because I don't like. It sounds like we confirm which bosses are ready for testing and ask their designers to have them in stable, testable state by the end of the week. That's just a strange thing, don't you think? It's almost like there's two competing bodies of work here. It's like, whoever's making first of all, I don't even know who this guy is. Zako. I have no idea. First time I've ever seen the name. Probably somebody new, I guess. But it's like who does that? And who is it that's working on who is their designers in this sentence? I would like to hear even more about that. The weekend before a PTR test, we generate a new build just to use for testing. It's interesting. The week prior to the test, so it's like, say, like, if this is all like the timeline doesn't really make a lot of sense to me either. But anyway, while bugs are to be expected on the PTR, we want to ensure a baseline level of stability so that we're not wasting players' time. This is where QA comes in, and they do a great job finding any bugs that could interfere with testing. Do they? What? Oh yeah. Once they fixed any major issues and have QA's blessings, we put the new build on the PTR and post our announcement for raid testing. So it's like, okay, great. I'm glad that you put this out. I'm glad that you said all this, but it just doesn't make it's just not like it's not lining up with what we're seeing, right? Like this isn't what's actually happening. Because one, these builds seem to be completely independent of rating. Like I mean, I guess it could make sense that there's times when it's like, there's nothing new in this build, or there's like almost nothing new in this build. I just don't really understand what a build is. You know what I mean? Like, is there some kind of deadline? Like every week we must do this and update things? I assume that's probably how it works. But is it supposed to work that way? Probably not. You know, like it doesn't need to work that way. It just seems kind of archaic to me. It's just the whole process just doesn't seem to work very. So we'll read the rest. The challenge comes in with the last part. Sometimes the problems we find are serious enough that they can take multiple days to fix or might prevent raid testing that week entirely. An example might be something like there are invisible holes in the floor all over the raid. That would be a problem, yeah. This is why we wait until we're pretty certain a test will happen before announcing it. That being said, we do know what we want to test by the start of the week, and we could announce that sooner, but it'd come with a significant risk of plans being changed or canceled later in the week. The question then becomes, would it be okay to announce a test earlier, have players plan to attend, and then cancel it later if we discover a problem that would prevent testing? I'd want to discuss with the team before promising any changes to how we do things, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this based on the information above. And they reply, honestly, would go a long way personally, presumably this part. And by that, I would mean having an announcement early, but stating what bosses could be problematic and pushing those tests towards Friday to buy more time. And if needs be cancel those, I'm sure we all have other things we can be doing on a Friday, right? Strange. I mean, so I don't really understand why this individual decided to make this post. It must have been like some personal gripe that they've had for a very long time. But my concern has always been like this is really the big part of why I wanted to make this, was because the data is tainted and you may have to go with an uncoordinated group pugs. I think that's probably the norm. I mean, I don't know about, I guess there's probably like, a lot of guilds out there that are cleared the tier and they're trying to get together for this, but it's always been at just awful times. It seems like completely out of nowhere. It'll be in the middle, like they'll just be announced at random times as well. So it's like the whole process just kind of sucks. So, if I could say something, if I could talk to this Zako guy, what I would want to say is like, listen, it's just not working, man. This just doesn't work. Okay. And it's really, really got to be time to figure it out, because I get what they're doing with the community council, and I get what they're trying to do to try to be like more open and more communicative, but it just doesn't really matter, because the process of testing is it's deeply flawed. He says this: players are expected bugs. We want to ensure a baseline level of stability, so we're not wasting players' time. You are already doing that by making them test this for free. Like, I mean, I'm not asking to be paid for it. I get it, but it's like it's already a waste of everybody's time, and that's not going to change. Like, no matter how good the process is. Yeah, unless the boss is literally like unless it's like a test run for the players, it's just a waste of their time, right? So this has been kind of the issue with the PTR the whole time. I feel like people go on the PTR, myself obviously included, they simply only go on there to test stuff that they can make videos on, or that could be potentially used as a point of influence moving forward. Like, Wowhead, write articles, get info on stuff coming up. I don't really see, like, honestly, legitimately, I'm going to ask you a question right now. Answer this question, please, if you can, in the comments below. Have you ever gone on the PTR? And if so, why? I think most players would say that they have either, they have probably gone on there, but not gone on there for any serious reason. and it's almost always to just dabble, right? It's just to like mess around and see what's going on. That's the way I've always done it. And even, I should be doing it more. Like in the early days of me creating content for this game, it was always like just spend, like Siler would just spend hours and hours and hours on the PTR. He probably spent more time on the Shadowlands beta than he did playing the actual Shadowlands expansion. So, I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, but that's really the only time people spend time. So if you ever go on the PTR, you'll see there's just not really. It's just like kind of just people not doing anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of people just messing around doing something on their own. But the whole process is flawed. Like, I don't really know how you change this, and I don't have a good solution. So I hope maybe you guys might have some input on this. But it's just, yeah, I don't. I mean, especially considering this is somebody who's like a serious ass raider, and they're basically saying like we can barely get together to do this. You know what I mean? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all to me. It's like you can't expect people to rate. Rating is not something that you just do randomly. It's like, hey, Thursday afternoon here, maybe I'll try a raid. You know what I mean? It's like that's just not really how it ever has worked in this game. Um, so I just don't really see what the point of this is, and especially with how the PTR has worked for a long time, I just don't. I really. I don't know how else to say it other than I think they should really reconsider what they're doing with betas. And my number one complaint is that they just don't, there's just no like, it doesn't feel like you're actually doing anything to help the game. It feels like you're just basically playing a demo, and I mean, I really just don't really care about that, honestly. So if you want more people to test the game, there has to be a better way to do it. And this is like the only thing that I think most people would probably consider, when they're doing like these targeted testing windows. Let's get on there and test the raid boss, or let's get on there and test the new Mythic Plus suffix. When they're doing these announcements and these targeted raid windows, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna go on there for that. But outside of that, it's like I have no reason to be on. It's just a complete waste. It's like playing a private server. You know what I mean? It's like I don't, there's nothing on there for me. It's not permanent. It's not enjoyable. I'm basically doing like half designed content. You know what I mean? Like I'm running around, and I think for me it's like also like psychology. Like I was running around Zereth Mortis, and I'm like seeing these things, and I'm like, well, that's probably just unfinished. We won't bother with that, or that's probably a bug. It's like I just don't really know what is and isn't tested. Like like those. I remember running around looking at those treasures. I'm like, how do you do that? Should I spend 30 minutes trying to figure this out? No, probably not. It's probably just not finished. Like, I don't know. Does anybody else feel this way? Let me know what you think. I like stuff like this because um, I think it's really good to see the insight. So it's a really good thing going forward. I hope we will see more. But whether or not, it's like, so the question here, um, the basically thing is the question then becomes, would it be okay to announce a test earlier, have players plan to attend, and then cancel it later if we discover a problem that would prevent testing? No, you should probably just completely reconfigure how the rate testing works. Like, I don't understand why they're trying to test one boss at a time, first of all. I don't understand why their bosses are only open for a set period of time. And I don't understand why it has to just be done one and that's it. So I would say if you're, I just don't really get the point of the testing, to be honest. Like, I'm not sure why anybody's doing it, because in the times I have done it, you barely can beat the boss. Like, it's like you can't even get like 10% through the boss sometimes. Sometimes they're so overtuned that it's like you can't even come close to beating the boss. And so I'm not really sure what anybody hopes to gain by that. And it always did kind of scare me, because it's like, are people actually beating this boss? Like, this doesn't seem like it's even in a playable state, let alone something that they're hoping for feedback on. So I don't know, man. I think that's just flawed from the start. So let me know what you think. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.